today. Hey everybody, welcome back to week 3 of the Midlife Woman's Author Series, where I'm interviewing authors of newly released books focusing on the health and well-being of women in midlife and beyond. Again, I'll just do a quick introduction for myself in case there's any new faces here. I'm Amanda Thebe. I'm a personal trainer, nutrition coach, been doing this for donkeys, honestly, like 30 years. I'm also the author of Menopocalypse, How I Learned to Thrive During Menopause and How You Can Too. And my sole purpose of doing these series is to help raise awareness and promote knowledge about menopause, to give you the tools to be successful in supporting your health choices. And this week, I am super excited to be joined by fellow Houstonian, Dr. Susan Hardwick-Smith. Hello, Susan. I'm glad we got you on.
Thanks for having me. Yes, Zoom technical challenges. We all know what those are. I had a little senior moment. We can talk about that.
We can talk about that. So I'll just tell you a little bit about Susan and then we'll get straight stuck into this talk. It's going to be super helpful. And I'm hoping at the end of this, we all come out with just some tools and solutions that can help us, because I know it's a big struggle for a lot of women. So Dr. Susan Hardwick-Smith is an award-winning, board-certified gynecologist dedicated to empowering women in midlife to feel fully alive. That's sexually, relationally, and spiritually. She is the founder of Complete Midlife Wellness Center here in Houston. Never been yet, but I'm just so excited that we're near each other. When the pandemic is over, we'll have a coffee. I'm a scaredy cat in the pandemic. She's also the best-selling author of the book we're going to talk about today, Sexually Woke. Awaken the Secrets to Your Best Sex Life in Midlife and Beyond. Wake them up, Susan. I can't wait for it. She received her medical degree from Baylor College of Medicine and completed her residency at the University of Texas Health Science Center right here in Houston. Welcome. I'm so happy to have you here, Susan.
Yay, thanks for having me.
So we're just going to go straight into the book, because it's one of those topics that, we all, I think now in the menopause sphere know things are going to change. And we're all going through our own personal sort of like history and experience when it comes to our vaginal health, our sexual health. But it's still not openly discussed. It can be embarrassing. It can be hard to broach this type of topic with your doctor. Obviously you are a doctor, and I realize that. So I'm really excited to sort of find out, why you wrote the book and how we can help one another through this sort of transition. So first of all, it would be really good to hear from you what you mean by being sexually woke, because like in my mind, I'm going like when I was 20, some days I would like climb the wall. I would be so horny. And I just don't remember the last time I felt like that. I don't remember. And it makes me sad that I don't remember that. And I know that you went through something similar yourself. So can you set the groundwork for us, please?
Yes, thank you. And the title of the book, it has a funny story behind it. So I'll try to make the long story a little bit more concise. But so I'm 53, and I went through menopause like a complete crisis, disaster, full on everything that you can name on the list when I was about 47. And I was not prepared for this. And I'm a gynecologist with every resource at my fingertips, but I felt like I didn't have anyone to help me. Like even the things that I've been recommending to people were not working. And I'm like Amanda, very fit. I was doing Ironman triathlons at the time. And I had this like idea that I was not going to take anything. And so I sort of suffered through it for a long time. But so as a result of that, and just feeling like I fell into a gap in healthcare where, everyone was caring about the pregnant women and the younger women, and even the geriatric patients were getting lots of attention, but there wasn't anyone really who was taking care of this sort of 45 to 55-year-old group. And I couldn't, even with all the resources, and I was a so-called expert at the time, which is kind of a joke, I'll tell you, I didn't know anything before I went through it myself. But so I said, okay, I've got to figure this out. So I did a big research study, and that's what led to the book. And we asked lots and lots of very in-depth questions about menopause symptoms and sexuality, because one of my main complaints, and I had a bunch, don't get me wrong, like insomnia, of course, hot flashes, night sweats, brain fog, weight gain, the whole shebang. And then I totally lost my sex drive. And I had sort of lost my sex drive maybe in my early 40s. And then we have all these reasons for it, right? Like, oh, I've got 3 kids and I've got a busy job and I've been married for a long time. And there's all these excuses, but I really just didn't have this. I was like, well, I'll do it, but I'd kind of rather not. And could we just get it over with fast, because my TV show starts in 5 minutes. So it was very much like not something I want, kind of rather not sort of thing. But then occasionally I would have patients come in, because now I was like so in tune, like I'm going through this myself. So my whole focus changed. This just was like every patient who came in was like I wanted to know what they were doing. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? So once in a while I'd meet someone who was in our age group who came in and she was like, had this rosy glow and was telling me about her amazing sex life. And she was so connected to her partner. And I was just sitting there going, well, shoot, I want to be like that. And so I found these women by doing the study. That was the purpose of the study. I wanted to find these women. And one of the wonderful women who I interviewed for the book identified herself as being sexually woke, which is how I got the name. And I thought that was such a great description, because she had gone through this transition of being asleep, so to speak, to her sexuality, which was where I was at the time. And so we have a joke in my office that she's not dead, she's just taking a nap. Your sexuality never goes away. It can certainly go into hibernation and be very repressed and squashed and not, be, over there where you don't look at stuff, but it's always there. And so these women who identified in the study, and it was only 7%. So if you're not feeling like that, you're in a very large group of the 93% who are still in the sexually not awake group, like I was.
So 93% are napping. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, so 93% were napping, 7% were awake. And so those were what we called sexually woke. My research team was calling them the positive responders, and that just wasn't very kind of fun or sexy. So I thought we called them the sexually woke. But so there was this concept that came up through my interviews, which were many, that was repeated over and over again. And I thought it was so amazing that there was something about coming out of a trance or out of a sleep. And so these women use metaphors like getting out of a box or coming out of a prison or coming out of their shell, or all these metaphors that pointed to waking up. It's like, oh, like there's something on the other side of this. And it's so optimistic and so amazing. And now this has also happened to me, because I went through this transition. And so now I'm one of the sexually woke. And anyone can be. So it's not limited to the lucky or the rich or the tall or thin. It's something that anyone can access, because I was able to isolate what they had in common, and it's teachable, and it's something anyone can have. It's just we're not taught how to do it, and there's no discussion about how to do it. And
no, there's no discussion at all. It's shocking. Like everything else, Susan, it's just like we're not important enough to talk about. And it horrifies me that you are an expert in this, but you also didn't know a lot of the information. And I hear this all the time, and correct me if I'm wrong. I understand that through residency or fellowship, only 20% of gynecologists will actually take any type of menopause training at all. And so
it's even that high, Amanda. Like I didn't have any, it wasn't even an option. I mean, I was a resident. Let's see, I've been in practice since 1999. So we didn't have a single class on anything to do with menopause, or maybe it was like an hour about, oh yeah, this is what happens, the ovaries shut down, so then you get all these symptoms and you have bone loss and you just get old, and that's that. So it was more like this is what happens, but nothing about what to do about it.
Any management of it, yeah.
It was just an interesting, curious thing that happens to old people. So look out for that in your office, and then tell them to go take an antidepressant and see a psychologist, because you don't have any other good advice. And that's so often what I hear. I mean, I've been working this morning, and I mean, I've seen patients this morning, and I hear this 100 times a month. I went and I told my doctor that I have all the classic symptoms of menopause. Weight gain, I don't have interest in things I used to. My sex drive is down. I'm not sleeping well. More often than not, oh, you're depressed. So here's an antidepressant. And guess what? That doesn't fix anything, because there's nothing wrong with the neurotransmitters in your brain. It's a hormonal issue. And then that wipes out your sex drive, makes you gain weight, and makes things 10 times worse. And then you're addicted to a drug that you can't get off. But that's just so commonly the solution, because we don't know anything else. Like, we're not taught, it's not their fault. And I'm talking about really good gynecologists too. They just were not educated. So
and I think that frustratingly for the layperson, like all the women like myself on the chat, will go in good faith to our doctor and ask for a referral to a gynecologist, just with the assumption that they know everything about it and have our trust in them. And I hear stories like you do all the time. I'm quite sure that they feel like they've been failed again. It's so frustrating. Can you lead us down why this happens? I mean, it obviously has got a lot to do with menopause. And so can you just give us like the umbrella view of, you know, why we're not so sexually woke? Because there's people in the chat saying they're in a deep coma right now, or in a very, very deep sleep. And come on, wake us up.
If you are, so first of all, if you are feeling like that, there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. And so I so want to emphasize that, because what happened to me and what happens to so many people is this lack of conversation, and then coupled by, you go to your doctor, who is someone that we've been taught in our age group to really respect and trust what they say, right? Doctor tells you something, then it's right. So when your doctor tells you, well, there's nothing wrong with you and you're fine, and you're dismissed, or you're given something that isn't helpful, we kind of retreat into thinking, oh, something's wrong with me. So I'm going to really keep that secretive. I'm not going to talk about it because I'm ashamed about it. And that just spirals into this sort of feeling of isolation. And so these kind of settings where we can get together and just say, me too, I have that too. It's like so enriching to me just to say, yes, we all have this. And why do we have it? Okay, so we lose the three primary hormones that our ovaries make: estradiol, testosterone, progesterone, when we go through menopause. So we completely lose the first two, estradiol and progesterone. We make varying amounts of testosterone even after menopause, but long story short, it's not very much. And so that actually declines from 25 years old on. And we joke, like, when you're in your 20s, the wind can blow and we have a good sex drive. You just don't need much help, right? But when we're 50, you kind of need all the help you can get. So so lack of hormones. And then I mentioned antidepressant use. That's a huge one. In some studies, up to 40% of women in certain populations in the United States in the 45 to 55-year-old group are taking some kind of an antidepressant. And those, most of them, with few exceptions, wipe out your sex drive. And that, so not to say that some people don't need an antidepressant. For sure, there's true depression, and it's a life-saving drug for some people, but it's very often overused and misused. So that's another one. And then the other thing, there's so many things. So menopause happens to us right in the middle of this gigantic ball of other stuff, right?
Yeah,
so
you can say shit on this show. It's perfectly fine. It's a
well,
really shitty time. Yeah.
It happens right around 50, right? Our kids are growing up and leaving. Our parents are getting sick and dying. We might be developing illnesses, breast cancer and other things. Our marriages, the divorce rate is very high around 50. Kids leave home, marriage ends. It's such a common thing. So relationships are coming to an end or having to be renegotiated. That's all happening. And then our jobs are maybe at their top, or maybe they're, things are changing. Like, we're at this
it's definitely a crossroads for sure, isn't it?
I was looking for that word. Thank you, Amanda.
It's okay. It's a menopause moment.
Yes, it's not a crisis. It's a crossroads. It's an opportunity. It's a transition. But there's so many stuff going on. And so when I'm exhausted and stressed out and worried about everything, does sex come to mind? No, I just want to go to sleep. So I go, take my bath, go to bed, and then someone's coming towards me who wants me to do one more goddamn thing. It's like, no, that doesn't sound like a very good idea. And so it becomes another thing to do, which is so sad, because when we're young, and I was in this too for so long. And when we're younger, if we can remember, many of us, not everybody, I mean, everyone has a different relationship with sex, but when we're younger, it wasn't just a thing to do. Often it was fun and playful, and it was a source of energy, not an energy drain. It was a way to play. And in some sense, I think we lose that, and our culture promotes that, because our culture says that we're not sexy. Now, everybody's sexy on TVs in their 20s or 30s. And when you get to be 45, they're like, okay, move over, get out of the way. We want someone younger.
Ageism is prevalent in this world, in the workplace, in media.
Our mothers, our families, our mothers, our churches, our culture teaches us, we're being like shoved all this information about how old is not sexy. So that shouldn't be something that you even want to do. And so we're brainwashed into thinking that this is just normal, right? So all of that together is why, I think.
And I think that narrative really doesn't help at all, right? I hear you, and I felt the same thing, and I think most women who are listening to this I tick some of the boxes that you've said, and somebody has mentioned there as well, and it just feeds on what you said, Susan, about like our relationships, whether it be with a male or female, like our relationships, I don't care what anyone says, sex is part of that relationship. And so where it became like an apathy for me, like I didn't even think about it, or don't even, my husband still does. My husband still thinks I'm foxy, because that's what he calls me. Like he's always trying to grab me or whatever in a very healthy way. And I'm just like, it is another thing to do, but I've had to have really good big conversations with him so that he realizes that it actually isn't him. If I was going to have sex with anyone apart from David Beckham, it would be him, right? So he needs to know he's still sort of the one, but he, has felt it, and so even just the knock-on effects of it and how it impacts our relationships, I think is not spoken about either, right? So
and then that's so huge, because everybody thinks there's something wrong with them, right? I mean, we're humans, we live in this world where we're the starring character in all of our stories. And so men are too. And so if we don't want to have sex with them, the first thing their mind is going to go to is something's wrong with me. She doesn't think I'm sexy anymore, or I'm not manly enough, or I'm not. So for them, it's terrible. And I can't imagine what it would be like to be turned down over and over again. Like if I approached someone and asked them to have sex with me and they said no, I would probably just go hide in the corner and cry, and then I would never ask them again, for sure. But we're doing this to our partners, men or women, regularly, and no wonder and I'm not condoning, please don't think I'm condoning having an affair or anything like that, but you can sort of understand why, if you're repeatedly, like my ex-husband was repeatedly told, no, I don't want to, I'm tired, over and over again for years, he would probably want to seek out connection from somewhere else. And again, not condoning it, but you can see how these things happen, because humans, they want that. Like Amanda said, like they're still wanting to connect and be cozy and snuggly and have sex, and it's really vulnerable to initiate sex. It's such a vulnerable place to put yourself in. And if we're in a relationship where we're not ever doing that, which was the case for me and most of the other patients that I talk to, it's really tough for them. And so that's great that you brought that up, because we've got to be in a relationship on the same page. Like if one person's really interested in sex and the other one isn't, it's a mismatch. And educating our partners about what we're going through is so important, so they understand, because they don't know about it either. And the tough part is, if we don't know about it, like if we're not educated about our own bodies and what's happening, how can we possibly tell anyone else? And so then we end up in a situation where there's just a big elephant in the room. Nobody's talking about anything because we don't know how to communicate it, and they have no idea what's going on. And then we drift apart and end up sleeping in separate rooms, and that's how those things go.
Although I might say the sleeping in separate rooms, I think there's a few women on here who would like to have their husbands in a different room, because they start snoring.
Well, you can have sex with them, and then they can
have sex and kick them out.
That's right.
So what about like as well as the lack of desire, the libido. I mean, we clearly have to talk about vaginal atrophy or the genital urinary symptoms of menopause, like the issues that surround that area when estrogen goes. And we have women that, you know, it hurts to have sex, it's painful, they tear, it's, the skin is thin, and it's, I hear these stories all the time, and it's actually ruining their quality of life, not just of sexually, but just generally. So I'd like you to talk about that, and then, like, we need some actions. We need to know what to do, Susan. You got to help us.
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
so keep in your mind, please, if you, I invite you to keep in your mind, this is such an optimistic subject, because all of these things happen, yes, and there are solutions. So any of this can be optimized. And I try to not say changed or fixed, because you're already perfect. There's nothing wrong with you. However, it's not optimal, right? And so there's all these emotional things going on that we talked about, and hormonal change going on that we talked about. And that leads to some very real anatomic changes. We lose blood flow to the clitoris, so it actually shrinks. If you biopsied it, and I don't do that, don't worry, I won't biopsy your clitoris, but if you did, before and after menopause, it's less vascular, so the nerves get less blood flow, and so therefore you can't feel as much. It can take forever to have an orgasm, or it's like it's like 20 minutes in, it's just like, oh God, it's too much work, just forget it. It's, you know, because it's just the blood flow is
That
decreased.
was just laughing because I completely identify with that. I remember
Like,
actually
oh, I was
saying,
almost there, and now it's gone. No, never mind.
yeah, it's
So
too much work.
those things are very common because of anatomic change. And then vaginal dryness is huge, and that's from estrogen dropping. So when we lose our estradiol, it affects all kinds of things. We already talked about the brain, all the nasties in the brain, but dry skin, dry hair, and then vaginal dryness is huge. And if you look at the cells, again, going back to this, I'm actually a real doctor, and once we practice evidence-based medicine, and, you know, science will show if you biopsy vaginal tissue in a woman who's making estrogen. I like donuts. Okay. I don't eat them, Amanda. Don't worry. I just like.
Oh, I eat donuts. Donuts are good.
Oh, really?
And
No,
yeah.
just a little bit. So they look like puffy donuts with like the jelly in the middle. They're like round, squishy, nice cells with like little fluid droplets in the middle. They just look delicious. And then that's from estrogen. So that's what vaginal cells look like when you have estrogen. And if after menopause, when you haven't had any estrogen for a while, they look like flat, thin pancakes, like paper. So if you think about getting a piece of tissue paper and you pull it, it tears. You get these little linear paper cuts. And that's what the inside of the vagina feels like when you have vaginal. Atrophy, doesn't that sound awful? Because it's like withering away. I hate that word, but it like the vaginal tissue goes from being puffy jelly donuts to being flat tissue paper. The good part is you can put estrogen back in there, and it turns back into puffy jelly donuts. And it's much more fun to have sex when your vagina is full of donuts than tissue paper.
Vaginal sex with donuts. Okay, we can all remember that, ladies. So talking
cells, yeah.
So can you talk about the localized treatments then? Because I know there's going to be women on here that, and I've had lots of conversations about hormone therapy. I'm very much a proponent of it. We know the safety about it out there now, but there's always going to be people or women that are nervous, or they've heard the stories. Can you sort of give us an overview of that, and then about the localized treatments as well, if you may?
Yeah, so we could talk for hours, weeks probably,
Yeah.
about hormone replacement. So we're not going to do that today. However, I will say like bioidentical hormone replacement, which is I take it, I give it to people, for the vast majority of women, is very safe and very effective, and it can be life-changing and restore all of the things that we're talking about. And so, and that's a subject for another day, and one of those yes ands, for vaginal dryness, for this vaginal atrophy, putting estrogen back into the vagina. And you can do that in a localized way. Like Amanda said, there's several products out there that you can put in the vagina, and they're bioidentical estradiol. And over time, now it does take time, because we need those paper cell, we're going to need to go through about 3 cell cycles to start noticing a difference. And each one takes about 6 weeks. So I always say it's roughly 3 months before you'll notice a difference. But if you use estradiol for about 3 months in the vagina, you start seeing the cells get nice and juicy again, and then you have your own moisture. I'm going to just slightly deviate and say a lot of us use lubricants, right? And that's fine. And so to do that for sure, but the goal would be that you make your own lubrication rather than putting lubrication over unhealthy tissue. I say that's like painting over rotten wood. It just isn't, it's going to not. It's
another good analogy. I like that.
Yeah. I usually talk in food analogies, but that, I don't know. I painted over some rotten wood in my house and it didn't work. Okay. So my mind goes to that. But so yes, you can lose lubricants, but the goal would be with estrogen that you don't need to do that anymore because you start producing your own moisture again. And so from a regular pharmacy for not very much money, you can get cream. Now, please do not ever use anything called Premarin. I'll just throw that out there because it's made from horse urine, pregnant mare's urine. It's awful, nasty, not bioidentical, animal cruelty. So that's my little plug for that. Don't use Premarin. It will work, by the way, but it's very effective, but it's just nasty the way they get it. So you can get bioidentical estradiol that's not from an animal source, and you can put cream in the vagina. It's, it's messy and a bit of a hassle to do, but it's very effective. You can also get a little tablet. So some very clever person, I wish it was me, thought about, wow, let's get rid of the messiness. And there's a little tablet and you just put it up there like with a little tampon applicator thing. Works the same. It's wonderful. You just have to do it, which is a bit of a hassle. And my favorite one, which sounds weird, some of you might use it or have heard of it. It's an estradiol ring. It's called S-string. It's the little ring like this, and you just stick it in the vagina. It goes on up by itself. You can't feel it or see it, and it releases a little bit of estradiol over 90 days. So you leave it in there for 3 months. Sounds strange, but it's amazing. And I like that one because it's so easy, and I'm into easy stuff.
I actually did use that one. I have a funny story because I do such a lot of weightlifting. It does create a lot of intra-abdominal pressure. And one of the little notes on it says, if you do create intra-abdominal pressure, it might fall out. And every time I deadlift, it would shift. And then one time I did want to have sex with my husband. He was like, have you got something up there? I can feel something. I was like, no.
Well,
anyway.
If you're doing squats like Amanda, you might push it out, but you could always just put it back in. So
exactly. Just remember to push it back up. Is my point.
Or you could take it out when, so you can get around that by taking it out. You can have sex with it in, but yes, you could feel it. It's not, nothing wrong with that. He can touch it. It's not harmful. Or you can, some of my patients take it out when they have sex and put it back in, but all of those 3 are the same stuff. They all work. And they will completely reverse that process, which is really life-changing.
And then, in the UK today, I read in the newspaper, it was an article in The Guardian, and it was talking about like the new female Viagra. And there was a lot of feminists were talking out about it. It's called Elsera, I think it's pronounced. And it's expensive as far as treatments go. It's £150, about $200. But a lot of the feminists and female doctors are speaking out, saying they've just completely got the wrong idea about why women actually do require like estrogen and not this type of Viagra type treatment. We're not men. We have to stop thinking that way. But my doctor recently suggested something called Vyleesi, and I wondered if you would talk about that and what your thoughts are on that. I chose not to do it again because of the cost. I'm quite cheap, and I think that's part of the problem with me. And also I don't want to spend. Not all of us have got a lot of money to spend on.
Yeah, of course. So I don't know the name of that product in Britain, but it's probably one of in the same family as Addie or Vyleesi.
It's the same thing, yeah.
They are going to be expensive because they're still under patent, and that's another big conversation you could have about drug companies and how they rank their prices up for 5 years and things are under patent. It's horrible. So these things are pretty expensive. So the studies on those drugs which work on the brain, they're not antidepressants, but they work by changing our neurochemicals, are not very exciting. Like they just work a little bit better than placebo. So I have a few patients who say it works for them, but again, I don't think it's not addressing the primary problem, which is
Right.
hormonal. It's going around the wrong way. And I totally agree with you. Viagra is basically just a blood vessel dilator. Like, we're so much more complicated than that. Like, I think I totally agree. Like, when people say that female Viagra, like, that's just, I guess the point,
Insulting.
yes, it's like
Yeah.
we don't just, we're so much more complicated than that. Like, if it just a blood vessel dilator worked, then we could just take Viagra and that would work, but it doesn't, because our libido's got as layered and complex, and our biggest sex organ is our brain, and men, that's not the case.
Their brain is down there. We know. We don't need to go into that. There's so many
vessels, and they're often going. But
there's so many innuendos we could have done there, and I know.
I know. Oh, you could try.
So we know estrogen, progesterone, testosterone are all part of the conversation. A very frustrating, and we spoke before this about the different treatment options out there for women, and we had the conversation about testosterone being part of the conversation, and not just about like our sexual health, but how it can help with bone health and heart health, and it's just like it's something we lose with age, and it's been ignored for so long. And there's no actual treatment option out there for us that's sort of like being validated by the FDA or regulatory bodies yet. Can you speak on that? And someone's in there, testosterone is not readily available to women in the UK. They use something called androstone, I think it's called, and you have to use, it's a male product, and you have to use a microdose of it.
Yeah. So the history of that, I'll just go back to all of the money in pharmaceutical research has been sent to men forever. So for the last 50 years, billions of dollars have been spent on male sexual health, on erectile dysfunction treatments, and all of these things. And so they're way ahead of us as far as what's available, which is really unfair and not good, but we're catching up. So now there are some things that are there, the products you were talking about, at least people are researching and putting some time, and maybe that's not the best product, but there's more research and more time being put into how to come up with some things that help women. But previously we got zero attention whatsoever. If men had to go through anything like this, they would have fixed it a long time ago. But all the money in research has been put into male sexual health and none into female. And now that's changing. So there's quite a bit of research now coming out, and it's going to be very exciting next 10 years, which is great. There's lots of very, very good research on testosterone and breast cancer, and breast cancer patients can use it, and it helps their menopause symptoms where they had previously been told they couldn't have anything, just for example. So lots of new stuff like that. So yes, you're right, testosterone is not readily available for women right now, but hopefully that will change so that we have stuff you can get from a regular pharmacy, like a testosterone patch, or now we can get it in different ways, but they're expensive and they're not currently FDA approved, because the FDA is way behind on.
Yeah, you were talking to me about that offline, and I know it's a whole other conversation that I'm definitely open to listening to about. It's just a very frustrating place.
Catch up. I mean, I think that's the bottom line. We're behind, and we have not been invested in. It's another form of sexism and ageism. All the money was spent on men, and then they got in trouble because all the men were taking Viagra and going home to a wife or a spouse partner who didn't want to have sex, and now they're like, well, shoot, we better do something about it.
We need the second part of the conversation to happen now, because
it takes two people, right? Because like, that's a real problem with men being treated for erectile dysfunction and getting all these things, and they're all ready to go, and we're not getting anything. So it just makes that disconnect and that gulf between us even wider.
Right. So we sort of know the how and like the why it happens, but like, what can we do? Like, if I was to ask you for, it's really hard question, but like just 3 things to do, and from like a lifestyle, from a conversational point of view, or from a pharmaceutical point of view, what advice would you give us now, just to see some improvements?
Well, so, and Amanda didn't ask me about this before, so we did not plan this, but it just came to mind that
I didn't.
In the book, there's actually 3 secrets of the sexually woke. So that my mind just goes to that, like, because I tried to figure out what do they have in common. And the secrets of the sexually woke, I will just tell you really briefly, they don't sound very secretive once I'll tell you what they are. And they're not really about medications or any of those things. So yes, find a doctor who knows about hormone replacement and talk about that. I'll say that's not even one of my three. That's just, we already talked about that. But the three secrets of the sexually woke, one is the first one was being open to possibility. And that was just a mind shift to change our mind from believing this limiting story about menopause being an end of everything, and changing our mindset to see it as this amazing possibility. Because now we've got some more time. Kids might be gone. We've got more time to spend with our partner or on ourselves if we're single, on self-care, and seeing the second half of life as this amazing opportunity where we can actually find out who we are and do what we were put here to do, and like find our true genius and all those kind of things. And it just requires, you can't just get it overnight, but just starting to see things differently and realize that this is a story that we've been told that needs to be challenged. And so once we challenge that story about, wait a second, I can be over 50 and be sexy and vibrant, and I'm not going to believe these other people or my own inner voice, maybe whoever it is that's saying, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't have a podcast, you can't write a book, you shouldn't be wearing sexy high shoes when you're 53. Like, just stop believing the story. So being open to possibility, that was number one. The second one was you have to know yourself first, which sounds pretty corny and obvious, but all of these women had this deep self-awareness, and they were all kinds of shapes and sizes. But they had some common sense of really loving themselves, loving their body, knowing their body. So spend a lot of time on knowing yourself, like by yourself, self-pleasure, and get a mirror, look down there, feel around, see what feels good, and learn how to communicate that. So we can't communicate these things to other people unless we know them ourselves. And most of us, and myself included, I was taught you don't talk about that, and you don't look down there. And so it takes a bit of a shift out of what we've been told, to just go in your closet with a mirror and spend some time with yourself, and get a couple of really good vibrators and see what feels good, and just play around by yourself, know yourself, mentally and physically. So that we can be fully present with our partners if we're sexually active, or with ourselves if we're single. And I always say, I cannot be fully present and connect with another person if I don't know who's here. If I don't know who's here.
That's like the best advice I've heard about that. And I remember watching Grace and Frankie and them designing that ergonomic vibrator so they didn't get wrist pain, and thinking, they're in their 70s and using a vibrator. There's hope, you know?
I didn't have a vibrator till I was 45. I was very sexually just blah. I didn't know. I'm a gynecologist. Like, now I have a whole bunch. So go get some. They're really great. So knowing yourself physically, and then knowing yourself so that you can be fully present, because really the sexually woke, that all came down to just being present. Like, they were able to be fully present, like having sex with the lights on, fully, all of me, my saggy boobs, my flabby tummy, the whole thing, just here. I'm here. And that's what leads to great sex. And the third thing was paying attention with an A, and being intentional about showing up and being present in our relationships. And so they're a little bit different. So attention is where I choose to put my mind, and that might be really paying attention to those little things that we sometimes forget, like the not taking things for granted, like being aware every day that this is somebody that I love, and I don't have all the time in the world. And I'm going to just remember that and pay attention. And the intention is like a little bit different, like setting your mind to very purposefully do something. Like, I'm going to just have sex twice a week, and I'm going to do it. And I'm going to go to the gym and get, I'm be intentional about what I want to achieve for myself. And I'm going to set time for self-care, and I'm going to do these things and follow it through. So those were the three things: open to possibility, knowing yourself. And the third one was paying attention and being intentional.
Yeah, I
So
love that. I love that all. And I think that I've even noticed that myself, instead of having that, oh, I better just get it done type thing, is like, I always enjoy it once we get going. It's just like going in the gym and you haven't been for 6 months, right? It's just like, get your foot through the door. You'll be fine once you get there.
yeah, that's right. And I say that too. It is like going to the gym, because you and I love going to the gym. And so I love going to the gym. And so that's unusual. But for many of us, it's like, oh, okay, I'm going to go. And then when you get there, it's like, okay, that wasn't so bad. I'm going to do it 3 times a week. And then of course you don't. And then, but yeah, so be intentional. And the more you do it, just like going to the gym, the more natural it becomes. And we know now that creating habits takes, I don't know, however many, 3 weeks, 60 days, depending on who you read. It's creating a new habit, creating new
It
health.
is. And habits are easier to stick to when it's something you enjoy. So find something that you enjoy if it is about your sexual health, and do that more, because the chances are you're going to do it. If it's something you hate doing, don't do it. Don't make that your habit. It makes no sense. I am going to open the floor now, guys, because we have about 10 minutes where we can just ask anything you want. I mean, this is an opportunity to you can do it anonymously. If you do it privately to me, I don't mind. I can read it out for you. So Kirsten, masturbation is seen as a taboo for women. Yeah, it really has, hasn't it? And that's a conversation that needs to be changed as well.
Yes, we need to self-stimulate, but self-pleasure is amazing. There's actually some good studies on it. There's health benefits too. We get oxytocin. That's a hormone that goes up after we have an orgasm. It's really good for you. It lowers your blood pressure. It actually probably makes you live longer. So doctors should prescribe masturbation for your health. But we've got to, that's another one of those limiting beliefs about being open to possibility. Who told us that that's taboo? And now I know who told me, but we have our own sources. It's our, culture, our parents, our church, whatever, to just be able to look at that and say, you know what, that's not true. And I'm going to throw that out. And that's where getting rid of our limiting beliefs, where we hear our voices say these things, being able to listen to your thoughts. So I talk about this in the book, like, don't believe your thoughts. Your thoughts are just thoughts. They're not real. Most of them are nonsense, actually. Most of mine are complete nonsense. How many of us would want our brains to be open to the world to see all the nonsense that's going through there? If you hear yourself saying those limiting thoughts to yourself, challenge them. Like, is that really true? Masturbation is great. And the more we are able to comfortably do that, the more we're able to
and it can be part of the sex you have with your partner too. It doesn't have to be something you do on your own. Yeah.
It's so if we're in a heterosexual relationship, the guys love that, I'll just say. And I'm sure it's the same for any relationship. It's just a beautiful thing to see someone be that vulnerable. It makes you feel very special to know that someone is being so vulnerable in front of you. That's a delicious feeling. Like, you feel so special to be given that gift. So that reminds me that a shift of seeing sex as a generosity practice. Like, if we are open enough to say, use a vibrator or masturbate in front of someone, that's a generosity practice. We're giving someone our most vulnerable self, and how wonderful it is for them to get that. So instead of a get something for me practice, which is how I saw sex in my 20s, I just wanted to have fun and it was about me. Now it's about generosity, and which changes it completely. And then you get it back, don't worry, because whenever you give, you get more back. So everybody's happy. But I just say, I think masturbation is a very generous practice. It's not selfish. It's very generous.
Okay, that's so great to hear. I like that. That's a great answer. So I've got quite a few, and we won't get to them all, but we'll try and get through them quickly if we can, Susan.
And if you want to, you can email them to me later, and I can email answers.
So and what I'll do is I'll provide everybody with Dr. Susan's contact information anyway, like I do every week. So there may be some resources she can share with you. I know you're a really busy woman, though. I appreciate that. So how to find a knowledgeable doctor? I mean, I always give out my standard answers, but you've not guaranteed, are we?
Yeah, it's tough. So, word of mouth is great. Like, people your friends have seen. Internet can be so difficult to look through. So in the United States, we have the North American Menopause Society. So at least people who belong to that, at least we know they've done have some menopause education. I can tell you, if you live in the United States, that's not like a guarantee, because it's pretty easy to belong. You just pay a fee. They don't necessarily have to have a lot of knowledge, but at least you're getting warm. And then, I don't know, this might land, forgive me if this doesn't land well. I think a woman is probably more likely to be empathetic and understanding about menopause than a man, and a woman who might be of a certain age that's actually been through it. And I can tell you, when I was 35 and giving advice about menopause, I did not know what I was talking about. So it helps a lot to talk to someone who has some personal experience with it. I'll just
Well,
say
that's all you're saying, isn't it? You're talking to somebody that gets it, right? You want to have that type of relatable conversation. And the British Menopause Society is another resource for the, I know there's people from the UK on here too. Somebody is asking a question that I don't want to spend too much time on because it could be a whole other show, but it's about estrogen replacement, saying, are women taking it these days? Yeah, they are. What caused cardio and stroke risk in the past, or did it even? Susan,
yes. Okay. I'll answer that really quickly. So taking estrogen by mouth, it goes through your liver, and the liver is full of clotting factors. So some really good studies. There was actually one in 2019. If you search British Medical Journal, venous thromboembolism or VTE risk, huge study looking at all the different types of estrogen replacement. Long story short, oral estrogen by mouth increases the risk of blood clot, heart disease, and stroke. Transdermal estrogen that does not go through your liver does not increase the risk of those things. So the big study that was done that was horrible and awful, published in 2002, used oral estrogen. So that's the very short version, but transdermal estrogen does not have that risk at all. And British Medical Journal. So that was 2019, a very good study on that.
Is it normal with the GSM vaginal atrophy to have discomfort but no dryness? It can look different for everyone, right?
Yeah, sure. So dryness, yeah, that's maybe a little bit of that's maybe it's not always dryness. So that's the primary reason that we get pain is from dryness. But I've seen women who were lucky enough to still have vaginal moisture, but the tissue's still pretty thin, and so the nerves are more exposed. So yeah, it can present differently. It's not always. Everybody's different. You know, we're all very similar in some ways, but we've all got our special sauce. You know, so yeah.
That's great. Somebody's saying they still have a lot of pain despite being on hormone therapy, and doctors say that their tissues look better, but even with the lube. Is there anything else that they could potentially try? Because it's the pain side of it. I mean, that's really frustrating.
So hard. So I'd love to see whoever that is in person, because it's so hard to give good medical advice without looking. But yes, I would just say there's always a solution. I never tell anybody, okay, I don't know, we're done. It's like, you're fine. It's like, find someone who'll keep persisting and trying to figure out what's going on. Because there are other reasons for pain. I mean, some women have pain within the course even before menopause. So we don't want to assume that could be the only reason. But
what about, are you a proponent of pelvic health physiotherapy?
So thank you for bringing that up. I think we can avoid, I personally, in my practice, I used to do I still do some, I do surgery, but I do a lot of vaginal surgery, but you can avoid probably half of the surgery for bladder incontinence and vaginal relaxation with pelvic physical therapy. So we used to just go straight to surgery, and now I make sure everybody does pelvic PT first. And there's all these cool things now where you can sit on a chair that just has electro stimulates that. So you're doing like 1,000 Kegels a minute or something like that while you're watching your phone. Really cool stuff that's out there now in pelvic PT. So yes.
Right. Yes. Okay. That's great. Yeah. I've experienced that too, and found it like in conjunction with a gynecologist was like the answer I was looking for. I feel like you've got to look at the whole thing, right? Okay. There's somebody on here saying that they can't reach an orgasm, which is very frustrating when they're trying to have sex with their husband. And I wonder whether actually the vibrator might be part of the answer to that. What do you think, Susan?
Okay. So not being able to have an orgasm is so frustrating. You know, some women have had this their whole life, and that's a different story. But if it's something that just is coming up around menopause, it's got to do with blood flow and hormones. But when I did my study, the number 1 and 2 most reliable ways to have an orgasm were alone. A vibrator alone was number 1, and manual stimulation alone was number 2, and vibrator with a partner was number 3, and vaginal intercourse was number 4. So if you're just having vaginal intercourse, that's just not always going to be the thing anymore. And that's okay. So sex can change. Like maybe it was really easy to have an orgasm with just regular old sex, vaginal intercourse, when we were in our 20s, but now we get to do all these other things. So I think if sex is like a menu, it's not like we don't just do that one thing anymore. And maybe an orgasm isn't going to happen with vaginal intercourse. And actually 60% of women don't have orgasm with vaginal intercourse.
Right. And so maybe accept that, Susan.
Yeah, which is fine. So do other things. It's fine. So, and if it's just not possible at all with anything, there's stuff that, the hormone optimization, there's things that can be done to increase blood flow. So, that's not something that I would give up on. But try vibrator, do it on your own first. Try first by yourself. A lot of women don't have an orgasm with their partner, and they have one with themselves, and that's okay,
And somebody actually has said that in the comments, that she actually does it on her own just to make sure she still can, and that's how she makes that happen.
And that's fine. I mean, there's so many ways to have. So we can be intimate with our partners or ourselves. So I call sex a intimate physical connection. It doesn't have to be penis and vagina. As we get older, sometimes it's not possible for him to do that. Maybe maybe we don't want to. That's another opening to possibility thing. Like now we can do all kinds of other stuff. And it's not a failure if you don't have an orgasm. You can still have a beautiful experience. This comes back to, sometimes it doesn't end in orgasm. It's just like a lovely time to cuddle and be close. And having an orgasm is great. So if we can, let's try to do that too.
Yeah, oh, that's awesome. We actually come to the end of the show. It went really quickly, and I know there's still lots of questions. I will make sure that everybody has access to you and how to find you and your book. So let's just talk about the book. So here it is, Sexually Woke. Now, I'm afraid when we do the giveaway today, we're going to limit it to the US. So I know people won't be very happy, but we had a UK one last week, and my book too. So we're going to do a giveaway to 2 people. I want to make sure that if you've won a book in the previous weeks, please don't try now, because I want to give everyone an opportunity to win. So I'm trying to think of a question that would be really fun to hear an answer to. Do you have one, Susan? Something we can ask them that would
like a quiz question?
Yeah. Well, I usually try and ask something that they might try differently. So should we try that, like in the bedroom, maybe? So the first 2 people to tell us in the chat something they're going to try differently in the bedroom with their partner. Oh, we have one person.
Lights on.
Okay, good. A vibrator and lights on. Love it.
Yes, those are beautiful. And I just recommend lights on for everybody, and vibrator. So yes, all on.
I think the lights on for me might be something I have to try, because I'm very private. I don't know if it's because I'm a suppressed British woman that never does anything naked. Maybe that's something I need to try.
They don't have to be spotlights, but just enough light that you can look at each other in the eyes and see who's there with you, just even if it's a fuzzy outline. But the dark, having sex in the dark is a way of hiding. It was for me anyway, because I didn't want to be seen, and I didn't want to see him either. And so, having sex with the person who's actually with you, and it's pretty cool.
Okay.
Being present. Yeah. So
that's so funny. So no spotlights, but think about creating a donut-shaped vagina, or like filling up your donut. That's what we're looking for. An orgasm a day should be prescribed to everybody. We've got We've got quite a few things to be working on here. For the two ladies that win one, which is Joyce and Rosemary, can you please email me your address? I've put the address in the chat now. If you could do that, please. It's just the easiest way for me to contact you and liaise with you. Susan, we've come to the end, but I want to say thank you so much. I think we could probably do another one of these because I'm sure that there's more questions and we can consider doing that like further down there.
I love, you can tell I love talking about this stuff, and it's so wonderful to have an opportunity to meet everyone and just have this sort of international women's circle hug that we're all connected, and we're anything that you're going through, I promise you, you're not the only one, and we can just really feel that we were supporting each other. So thank you for being.
And then creating like, and having like this as a platform, like just having an open conversation. I think that I spent a couple of years like just expecting that my sex life had gone down the drain and never spoke about it, even either with my partner or my friends. And that's the way change happens, right? We have to be really open about this, as uncomfortable as that feels, right?
Well, because it's just like at the gym. If you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing, right? In our comfort zone, we're comfortable. And if we don't get outside our comfort zone, whether it's working out or sex or anything, learning a new language or whatever it is, when we're outside our comfort zone, we're uncomfortable. And getting comfortable with being uncomfortable is so wonderful, because that's where we're growing. And you can always go back in your little box, but just go out and come back and, play.
Awesome. That's awesome. And so have you designed a vibrator for us yet? Like that's got to be your next move.
Oh, there's so many good ones already out there. I would have to really raise the bar to find something better, but I'll just do a plug for the one that I like the best. VUSH Bush. It's an Australian company, and they make this the one that has the suction little thing. It's delicious. It's called
actually they emailed me yesterday and they're sending me out one, so I'll report back, ladies.
It's very nice. I'll just say I love it. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for coming on the show. We very much appreciate it, Susan. It was so helpful, so informative. And ladies, what will happen is tomorrow you will get an email with the recording of this, also all of the links to how to buy Susan's book, where to find her, and get valid information. And I just, before we go, I'd like to say, join me next Thursday. I'll be speaking to Meg Matthews, who many of you from the UK may know, Britpop, our Britpop time. Gosh, I remember watching her in the newspapers, but she's now become this menopause maven. She's completely changed like her whole focus now, and she puts out the most amazing information. She wrote a book called The New Hot, Cruising Through Menopause with Attitude and Style. It's just been released in the US. So I'll be chatting with Meg next week, so please join me then. But otherwise, thank you.
Have a great
afternoon. Amazing. I very much appreciate this today. Thank you.
Wonderful.